Cool. Looks like I've got the first item here. First, glad to see that our group's grown. Last week it was just Alejandro and I talking to ourselves. So we've already got some more attendees here. Excited about that. Yeah, I've been working on observability for Runway, specifically metrics, and I wanted to give a demo walkthrough today of how we're approaching default SLIs, SLOs, saturation monitoring, and service overview dashboards for all Runway services. So I'll kind of walk you through that process and we can go from there.
Everything
So,
you generated.
oh, sorry. Cool. Yeah, so just to kind of recap, so when we onboard a new service into Runway, the kind of first step is to open an MR on the provisioner to add your project. And a result of that, we stamp out the new infrastructure, create a deployment project. And then the main point here that I want to highlight is that we also generate a unique Runway service ID that's available in your deployment project. And this is just a way for, this reflects the name of the Cloud Run server, the service name in Cloud Run as well. So for example, like model gateway becomes like model gateway, and some hash or something to that effect. So the way that we're approaching this is storing, fully integrating with the existing monitoring stack. So after you provision your service, if you'd like to mature the service and add all this default monitoring, what you would do is you would open up an MR to the service catalog as well. And this would be a process that we're pretty familiar with here. You kind of add a new service. And then what you would do is essentially copy about 10 lines of code here to create a metrics catalog entry for your new Runway service. It's built with defaults in mind. So really the only things that you need to provide are the name of the service, the name of your team, and the unique Runway service ID that we would generate for you. So you would just completely copy this code here. What this kind of looks like behind the scenes is we've just kind of scaffolded up a lot of the configuration that's required for spinning up a new metrics catalog entry here to provide these defaults here. So the main emphasis is that all Runway services will ship with default SLIs and SLOs. So very specifically, the SLI is the Runway ingress component. So this is the application load balancer that just serves the HTTP request for that service. Right now, this is currently based on the stack driver metrics because that's the runtime for Runway. But we're trying to approach this in such a way that we can swap the underlying metrics if we end up changing the runtime to something like Knative or Anthos, etc. So this kind of scaffolds that all up for you and exposes some of those optional configurations if you're interested in that to, for example, change your app decks, etc. So that kind of covers the default SLIs, SLOs. Then what we've also included here is saturation monitoring for all Runway services. So as part of that, calling that Runway archetype, essentially what you get is saturation monitoring for 4 resources. These are kind of the 4 levers that we can currently pull in Cloud Run right now for all Runway services. So the first are kind of traditional utilization resources. So CPU, container CPU utilization. So we have some options for scaling that. Memory utilizations, very similar kind of configurations that we have there. The Runway container instance utilization. So every Runway service can essentially run a min and a max number of instances to automatically scale up as traffic increases or decreases. That has an upper threshold limit. I believe it's currently set to about 100 max instances. So the reason we want to kind of monitor this saturation resources, if we're running at capacity there, we would need to scale up the number of max instances, whether that's tweaking it for that specific service or reaching out for a quota increase or something from GCP. And then the final kind of saturation point, the last lever that we have to pull here is it's a little bit I guess maybe more complex, it's called max concurrent requests. This is a configuration where for all those instances that your Cloud Run service can have that I just mentioned, you can essentially configure a number of max requests that instance can serve at any given time. So that's helpful to know if a particular instance is kind of being saturated with requests, and we need to tweak that as well. So again, these are kind of the 4 levers that we have to pull with the current runtime, which is Cloud Run. So you get this out of the box. Then the service dashboard. So for all kind of provisioning, Runway provision services rather, we'll add a kind of a Runway overview to our existing managed service overview dashboards. And then this will include some panels that are useful for all Runway services. Right now, this just includes Runway, the network IO, container startup latency, and container probe latency. So this is kind of in addition to the existing panels that will be generated for the SLIs, as well as the saturation resources. So those remaining kind of auto-generated charts are the ones that don't necessarily fit nicely into our kind of like mental model or our model for the dashboards, if you will. So what this kind of looks like now is let me do a quick screen share here. Can you see Google Chrome? Oh, no, still sharing VS Code. Okay, here we go. Yeah, so what this looks like, this will automatically generate the service overview dashboard for all Runway services. Like I said, you just kind of copy and paste that 10 lines of code, no configuration required. This will include those kind of the network IO, et cetera, that I mentioned. That will generate there. That's completely collapsible. Some of these, because the recording rules aren't deployed, are not going to actually render the data, all of it. But you can see all these saturation points that we have that will be monitored as part of the capacity planning process, and we will just know this for any given Runway service, as well as the SLI details for the ingress container as well. So the error rate, aptX, et cetera. And then it's just kind of like traditional kind of service overview dashboard. We'll link to, we'll add some links here to the observability issues, et cetera. And then this kind of gives us parity with the existing dashboard that's currently in Cloud Run using the stack driver metrics. So you can kind of see like some of these map nicely to our SLI model, some of them map nicely to our saturation model, and then kind of the remaining network graphs, et cetera, just fit nicely into that general overview panel. Yeah, so that's kind of the demo there. We kind of just want to make it like as simple as possible to opt in for this. I believe that all Runway services now will automatically, just by kind of using this this library, will have like a service maturity model of like a level 3, I think, just by having aptX, et cetera. All that criteria just automatically gets checked. And yeah, so it's still kind of a it's not without trade-offs. It's still kind of a manual process in the sense that you would open kind of a companion AMER after you provision a service. We think that this will probably be at like a lower rate than, for example, we have like a lot of test services that are currently in the provisioner project that might not need to be, submitting metrics into the monitoring stack, et cetera. So that maybe would be part of our graduation processes, if you will, of like, taking a Runway service from, just some internal service to maybe something that is serving production track. Maybe it's part of the readiness review process or something like that. I don't know. And but yeah, I think the big win there is everything's kind of checked in version control. It's all automated after that initial AMER. And we could even consider like automating that aspect, I think, at some point, but probably premature optimization right now. So yeah, I think that's everything. I'm gonna pair up with Alejandro. We're gonna deploy the stack driver exporter maybe like tomorrow or early next week to get those metrics flowing in and the reporting rules in place. But yeah, it's looking pretty promising. I think like it's I've added link to the AMER. This will have like documentation as well. So I think like it's important that we kind of think about like the user experience of our Runway users, right? Because this is really be like their primary interface into Runway, right? Like they need to know how the application is performing, the reliability, et cetera. So kind of just like auto magically generating this dashboard, I think is like going to be how they're really just understanding how their service is running, and they don't have to log into GCP. They don't have to worry about anything else like that. We also hoping, or we have plans kind of in the near future to also add Grafana annotations to this generated service dashboard as well. So we'll know when we're deploying, the canary traffic, et cetera, the specific revisions that are being deployed. And then that will really just create, once we get that final piece in place, which is not required for GA for model gateway, it will really just create that feedback loop for Runway developers, right? Like I've deployed some code, I could see the revision, I could see the error rate going up, I can revert, et cetera. And just like they're just managing everything from that single dashboard. So it's just like, providing some documentation, like, is going to be key there. Like, how do I do this? Like, I have a new service, what do I do? Okay, just copy like 10 lines of code. If you want to configure all the SLI stuff, like maybe your app's slower, you need to lax the appnext threshold, whatever. We can support all that, but just try to go with the same defaults there, I think will be key.
Cool. I found the closed AMER chains. I was actually going to take a step back just so we understood from the observability side the other plumbing of the architecture. It looks like the stack you'll have the stack driver exporter, the Prometheus exporter there, but the AMER is closed. So I don't know if there's a different architecture diagram, but you're going to use the managed Prometheus that's going to remote, right? Is that still right? Is that
sorry? Yeah. So that particular architecture diagram is outdated. I'll have to kind of comment there. So what this is I just highlighted the metrics catalog changes there. We're going to run just the stack driver exporter once in our existing K8s workload. We kind of already do this for I think the PVS service, I want to say the pipeline validation service. So this like new like Runway stack driver exporter just sits alongside that.
It's in a sidecar, so it's not its own. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So we don't. This doesn't have to deal with any remote write or anything, because with the way that the stack driver exporter works is like essentially like it's per project, and then all the services get imported. So we just like import we run the exporter for Runway staging, Runway production, gets all the service metrics that we need there.
But which Prometheus is taking that stuff from stack driver exporter? Is that are you guys using a managed Prometheus or?
No, it will be whatever the PVS service is using. I don't know, Alejandro, if maybe.
Okay, I'll need to go look at that. Yeah, so no, that's probably good enough for me to just go research. I was just trying to make sure we understood how it was going to use it in leverage remote, right? Because you're mentioning recording rules, and in the parallel effort with scalability, we're trying to move everything to Thano. So I was just trying to make sure that vision was accounted for too, so that you just don't have to rework anything there.
Yeah, definitely.
But no, it's really cool stuff. A lot of the out of the box stuff is really cool. So that's really neat to see.
Yeah, that's totally sick. Really, really, really cool stuff. I guess that leads, like, if you don't mind, me taking the driving wheel for a minute. That leads right into some of the, like, have I got a treat for you when it comes to Grafana dashboards? Let me share my screen really quickly. Is that screen one? Let's try that. All right. So can everyone see this? So this is the. By the way, I haven't got you on like, because you're down here. So like, if I'm actually, let me move that over there for a second so I can talk to you while I'm typing away. So basically, what I've done is let me bring this screen over. So this is the reconciler at that version of the AMER that I linked in the agenda, and this basically adds some architecture for grabbing logs from. Okay, right, yeah. No, I hadn't really planned out this presentation. I just wanted to show it off. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sort of like talk through it, and then like it'll be pretty cool. So kind of
demos are the live ones like this. Thank you.
Yeah. So this is the architecture I'm going for. So basically, the way it works, and there was a discussion about this with Graham. Graham was talking about this in the morning, the AMER version the Runway demo this morning, and I just totally missed it because I was asleep. But anyway, like the way it kind of works is like we've got Cloud logs. So Cloud Run writes all its logging data to Stackdriver logs, and then we've got the Terraform that I've set up that adds the log sync, the PubSub topic, PubSub subscription, and a Promtail instance to Runway. So if you have a quick look here. So this is my experimental Runway project, which is just the model gateway. And then I've got a Promtail instance here. So the way it kind of works is logs from this go into Stackdriver, and then there's a log sync, which basically forces them into Promtail, and then Promtail writes it to our Loki endpoint. Roughly. If anyone's got any questions after this, don't stress it. I'll answer them all. It'll be really cool, I promise. But once they're in Loki, we can do all sorts of cool stuff. So this instance, what was that dashboard you were just showing now, Chance? Was it the model gateway? Yeah.
Yeah, that was a snapshot, a local snapshot. Yeah. So
okay. Well, I'll just grab it. I'll make a new dashboard and I'll just show you what I mean. So when you push things into Loki, it gets its own tenant. So the tenant I'm using right now is just called Calliope test, and that appears as a data source here automatically. So you can select that data source, and then this is all the logs from that particular Runway. What do you call it? Like Runway application, I guess. So you get logging data, and it comes straight into Grafana. You need to select the logs visualization. And then these are all the logs from that particular Runway deployment. But the great thing about this, and this leads like really interestingly on from what you just said, Chance, about having it like templated out as part of runbooks, is because it's in Grafana. Like one of the great things that we can have is that we can have a logging widget there as well. So when you go to look into Grafana and you're like, oh, hey, what's up with my application? You know, like talking about like annotations, and you've got like SLI and SLO budgets, and you're like looking at it and you can see like all your log data will be there. And like your Loki instance is like very, very powerful. It uses a query language called LogQL, which is very similar to PromQL. And it lets you filter down specific things. So you can have a logging widget that just shows error messages or just shows warning messages, and it can be right there in Grafana. And like with that MR, if we merge it, when it gets merged, like that kind of, or when we iron out the last little kinks in it, which is, how do we provision tenant data in a nice way? Like that will just come with every kind of Runway application. I know that, like, I'll just say this out loud because I know that if anybody watches this recording, they're probably going to have this question. They're like, how does this tie to Elasticsearch? Because they're both powered by PubSub, the view is that there'll just be a PubSub beat on the end of that queue as well. So Promtail subscribes to the queue, and then a PubSub beat will subscribe to the queue as well. And we'll duplicate both messages to all subscribers, and then you'll get all the logging data in Elasticsearch, and you'll get all the logging data in Loki as well. Yeah, that's it. That's my cool little demo. I know it wasn't like particularly interesting, but you can go play with that now in Grafana if you like. Like that's not specific to anything. It's not like a local version or anything. Yeah, that's it, pretty much.
That's awesome. The integration with Grafana, I think, will provide a lot of opportunities for that default templating that you've mentioned, like kind of tying in nicely with the previous demo. I think particularly one thing that stands out that we could use for perhaps some of these like Loki log visualizations is access to the Cloud Run instance ID, which is in fact in the structured logs, but is omitted from the various Stackdriver metrics. They don't expose that. So I think like we could use that to essentially get even further granularity at the Cloud Run instance level as well. So that looks pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think it should include the instance ID, right? In these log messages. I'm just having a quick look.
Yeah, I think in the Stackdriver logs UI it does. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of things in here. So there it is. The instance ID. Yeah, it's there as part of a label. So you should just be able to pull that out of like filter or maybe make like a templated variable in Grafana to be like, here's all the instance IDs, please select one, and then like I'll give you all the logs from those particular things. But yeah, cool. That's it. That's all I wanted to demo, really.
And you mentioned like the logs widget. Like, can you also use that with like the traditional visualizations? Like, if you just wanted to represent as like a line graph, etc.
Sure. Let me see if I can do this. Don't know if this will work. Just on my video for a sec. So, if for example, let's say you wanted to do like a time series visualization, so you can do. I hope that I'm going to be able to do this first time because this would be like really embarrassing. But you can do things like, I believe rate is a function.
Yeah, rate
Sorry.
is a function. It's like prompt.
It's
so
like
you get a rate
QL.
of errors in the logs or rate of a particular error message.
Does it literally function? Like it's been a hot minute since. Oh, there we go. Look. Yeah, great. And then expression. I had it just then. I lost it. It's really annoying. Sorry. Maybe I can do this.
I think maybe you're just missing the closing parentheses.
On this, do you think?
And then the range 5 minutes or something. I'm assuming. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it is literally like from QL. Yeah, so you can do things like this, and then obviously you could add like level, or you could say, do we have level as a label here? What have we got? Okay, we don't have level as a label, but we could have. Level.
So you could do the for the legend, for example, like instance ID or something. Yeah, okay, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, so you can do like lots of like interesting log based metrics out of it as well, which is like pretty sick. But yeah, it's all the Kibana stuff, but in Grafana.
So what they were discussing in the APAC demo was where the Terraform modules that configure this should live on, whether they should be on Runway or config management.
So they should probably be in Runway. That's my gut feel. Like I feel like having are we still talking about logging? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like I think yeah. I saw Andrew's comment from the email one. I think that my gut feel says that we don't want this should be done in the provisioner. Like the observability team like provides like an endpoint you can just send logs to, and this is just one example of that, how to use it. Like there's no kind of formalized interface to what that looks like. Dave, like correct me if I'm wrong here, but there's no kind of formalized interface about what that looks like. It's just an endpoint that you just send logs to. Promtail can do that, and it can like add all the filtering. Like so can the OTL collector, and so can anything. You can even just rip them straight off PubSub without any intermediate tool. Like you can just like fire hose them straight to Loki if you want to. Like I'm not sure that the observability team should own that. Like I like, do you know what I mean? Anything past that kind of barrier, because like every team's going to have their own interface or their own specific implementation of what that looks like. I think like we can provide examples and like how to do things, but ultimately I think it's down to the teams to decide what that kind of looks like. But I don't think that it belongs in config management, because this is something that's provisioned alongside every single service. Like, does that make sense? So you provision, like your Promtail in this instance, for example, your Promtail instance is going to have completely different configuration based on what the service wants, what that team wants. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think for observability, I think that's our future thing that we got to figure out is like, how do we want to maybe provide sample sidecars or other things that are a little more prescriptive, just like what Chance was showing for the metrics of like, you get these things out of the box. It could be the prompt that like make it simple in terms of they just need to fill out what logs are important to them, but behind the scenes we pre-bake a Promtail container that's going to track the right logs, but it already feeds in the tenant ID or something like that. But that's a little different than maybe what Runway needs, because you're already shipping to pub sub. So we're just trying to, I don't know if we're just trying to create a thing for us for Loki that's just going to go grab the right pub sub subscriptions and just ship it straight to Loki.
Yeah, I mean, outside of, yeah, I mean, like, the thing is like, it could, like, I mean, I guess this is probably a wider question, maybe not specific to Runway, so I don't know if it belongs here. But, like, I guess, like, the big question I've got on my mind is, like, you know, like, that would kind of imply that observability have a set of supported things. And like I was mentioning, like, you can literally send anything to the Loki endpoint. Once you've got your
I think
credentials,
we may want to create the library of, okay, you want to ship your logs to us. If you're using pub sub, this is the way we'll do it. You need to let us know what you're picturing for Runway. Or like you said, Calliope, we're just going to take the fire hose. Like, we'll create a subscriber that just we subscribe to topics. You let us know what those topics are, and we'll put them in Loki assigned to a specific tenant or something like that. But in, you know, like in the future, it's hard because, like, for .com, we're actually thinking like, hey, we're just going to do Promtail straight to Loki. Like, we're probably going to cut out pub sub.
well, yeah, I mean,
Like, we still got to think about that architecture a little more, because we still got to decide. I think there's some things the security infra team relies on pub sub, so we may end up still doing some things through pub sub, but we just haven't evolved that far yet. But in either case, it might be the, like, okay, you want to go straight from Promtail to us, here's how you configure your sidecar. Like, we'll provide, you know, a piece of a Helm template or something like that for configuring that sidecar. And if you're going through pub sub, then this is how you do it. But these are the two models of how you do it.
okay,
And
so I think what I'm hearing is that Promtail is kind of like an observability. That's the barrier. It's Promtail rather than like the Loki endpoint. Is that?
I'm not sure I
that
understand
one
what you
thing?
mean by barrier.
So like, so in this example, you've got the logs that come through the logging sync. They go into a PubSub queue, and then we've got Promtail, which subscribes to the queue, and then that sends it to the Loki endpoint.
Correct. Okay. Yeah.
So I think I was saying that, like, the kind of barrier to ownership is at the Loki endpoint. So anybody can send us anything in any format they want, like, but when it comes,
there still has to be some experience that we provide for how do we map that thing that's consuming a queue to a particular Loki tenant. There's still a barrier of we own that piece, right?
Sure, but I think okay, yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, if the barrier is at Promtail, that's okay. And then, you know, someone like a given team or like a Runway user can just plug in their Promtail config and decide what labels and all their relabeling configs, similar to Prometheus, right? Like, you would have, presumably you run like the Prometheus agent or the OTL collector, but we're kind of saying in those examples, like, the observability team owns those things, or owns the mechanism for deploying those things, like the OTL collector or the Prometheus agent. Okay, yeah, no, that's fine. Like, I'm
totally decided. I think we just keep trying what your initial proposal is and see how it works.
Okay, yeah, no, that's cool.
That makes sense.
But yeah, for now, I'll just set it up like so that you just plug in a Promtail config then, and then we'll kind of go from there, I guess. Yeah, that's.
So I had a question. I guess I had a similar kind of question in the context of remote, right? And probably it's applicable here to the logs. But so are we thinking about like the tenant, whether that's Thanos tenant or a Loki tenant, like in the context of like just Runway, like Runway staging, Runway production, or and just trying that as a first iteration, or are we trying to bake in like per service tenant, like per Runway service tenant granularity?
That's a good
from the
question.
beginning. Like, it's like maybe just higher limits, you know, for simplicity, like we just, you know, Runway prod, Runway staging, and we get, you know, maybe we pass some metadata in there, like in the headers or something, and then, you know, if we find we're hitting those limits, maybe we need to break them out.
Yeah, well, and if
just
there's only
of,
one
like,
tenant for
story
Runway, then, you know, then your semantics are gonna have to, like, you're gonna have some sort of labeling that helps separate that, you know, like your different applications, which I assume is baked in because it's what you're doing in the metrics. But I think we need to think about that, because there is that experience of what Calliope showed is like, if we have a bunch of different tenants, then you're actually picking a bunch of different data sources, because that's what you just demoed, right, Calliope? Like each tenant really is going to be a different data source in Grafana. So some of my reaction to your question, Chance, would be like just have one Runway tenant, because then you're not going to have to switch a bunch of different data backends. So like if Runway is ultimately running 20 different things in the future, having 20 different data sources in Grafana is going to be confusing. And even just trying to map out all that JSON it versus like if it's just, okay, you know, this is the label that filters all of that, it might be the right simpler thing to do. But I just worry about, like, you know, are we complicating the label or are we complicating the data source? I think we need to think about that.
I'm gonna put up an opposing opinion. But
That's
feel free
fine.
to disagree.
My opinion
Feel
was
free to-
weakly held, just stated.
An alternate plan. I think dates like individual tenants are better, and the reasoning is that we can more finely control like how they behave. So like individual tenants, we can say this particular service, say for example code suggestions, like is a lot more heavy user than like the other services in Runway. And in that particular case,
Yeah,
we
you
want
want
to
to
keep
know
those
the
running.
neighbor.
But secondly, templating in Grafana, you can actually template data sources. So you could have like one set graph and just have a data source template. You don't need to add anything extra templating to like JSON in it or anything. It's just you can set up a thing and just say this is a Loki data source and allow the user to select what they want to view. But yeah, like there will be probably a lot of data sources. Like I don't think, but and on the flip side, it also greatly reduces the cardinality of metrics. If you've got 20 services in Runway,
Yeah,
and that's 20 times cardinality
that is a good
at a
point.
minimum. So yeah. Again, weekly health. You know, again on the side of weekly health.
Oh, but
I think-
that does sound like a better foundation of eliminating some of the cardinality. And I mean, since we're already using JSON to template that stuff out, I think then it just turns into the complication of what Chance is maybe asking too, of just how do we align the tenants between both Thanos and Loki, try to keep that fairly simple. So that what they template out in future dashboards, because templating out these different data sources will become a thing. So we're just making sure we take it into account in what we create with these out of the box dashboards. Because I think that's the other thing that will be nice is right now, all the out of the box dashboards from what Chance demoed are all just based on metric data. But in the future, it'd be really nice to have out of the box dashboards that are the combined logs and metrics all together. So we'll just need to take that into account.
Yeah, I think
when we build.
But I think like from my gut feel, like is you could probably just build like, and you know, maybe feel free to shoot me down here, but if you don't need any custom functionality, like say for example, you know, you have mentioning how like you get these default things out of the box, like you could create a single dashboard that represented that for any arbitrary data source and just template in the data sources. So like you wouldn't even need to add any configuration. Like if you're a new Runway user and you don't need any custom implementations, you can just go to Grafana and it's already there, because that dashboard is just one place and you just click to change out your data source with whatever. Does that make sense? And then you would have, you know, and if the data sources are even the same names, like it would make it kind of, yeah, like I don't know if that makes any sense at all. Like it does in my brain. I'm like, because a dashboard can have a variable of a data source, so you could just plug in your tenant there, and then you just get all the data for that tenant, and you wouldn't need to do any JSON there or adding any configuration.
Yeah, so kind of a similar scenario came in the context of like stack driver metrics of like, in theory, you could have this monolithic Runway service overview dashboard and then filter by all the Runway services. And I think we opted to just generate like a per dashboard, per service dashboard that would essentially hard code those you know, the service name kind of template that you mentioned here. So maybe it'd probably be similar function. And then maybe they're like for Runway operators, I could see the advantage of like having a dashboard that could support this, the dynamic filtering as well.
Yeah, just spitballing, but yeah.
What you're saying makes more sense, Calliope. I think in terms of let's have the different data sources, different tenants, but can we do something simple where like convention makes sense that the tenant ID for Loki and Thanos is either the same or very similar so that it makes it easy to template out?
I always presumed that would be identical.
Yeah,
In the tenant creation script, like they're assumed to be identical.
yeah, because then at least what you build, whatever we would potentially do in the future, templating that stuff out will be nice and simple. Cool.
You mentioned the tenant provisioning is kind of being similar between the remote write and Loki. Like I know with the Thanos, there was some rough edges around like the basic authentication and possibly like reimagining what that looks like. Like would it be the same process for both of these, metrics and logs to like add the tenant, get the credentials? Like, do you envision this as like a streamlined process and it's just like a checkbox of like metrics and logs?
Try to figure out how to streamline that. We would like to. We're sticking with basic because OIDC, there were complications in the way that it was going to get to work. So, but basically, because it was basic auth in terms of like, hey, here's your ID, here's your credentials, you get your 3 things, and you've got what you need. Behind the scenes, there's some plumbing we need to do to map a tenant to the different stores, and we just talked about that yesterday. But I think what Nick demoed yesterday, Calliope, could be reused for Loki too. It seems
that's what I'm hoping.
Yeah. Vibe I was getting.
I want to do that as well for Loki, rather than just existing vault.
But yeah, I think to answer your question, like on that other side, yeah, we want to make all of that unified. So basically, you go ask for a tenant from our stuff, and we'd create a little UI or something that's like, yep, okay, I've plumbed that in, added the back end things that we need to do to create our back end for that stuff, and then yeah, spit you out your credentials.
Cool. Sorry, I'll fill that in afterwards. Nothing further to add, unless anyone's got anything else they'd like to chat about. Right, cool. Alright, I'm going to jump off then, go get a cup of tea. I'll see you guys in a bit.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. See you online.